whether a community is resilient or not, it's looking pretty complex. Now this is a diagram that's Norris et al. It's a favourite paper of mine. Please come and ask me for it if you're interested afterwards. They've looked at various pieces of research that have been carried out on resilience and looked at the various aspects that really tie in to make a resilient community. And there's a number of aspects that are really important in defining a community. So, and these are a number of things that Alan mentioned also. Information and communication. So you need trusted sources of information. You need skills and infrastructure. You need a responsible media. And you need narratives. Another element that they've identified as important is economic development. And within that, fairness of risk and vulnerability to hazards is important. There needs to be a level of diversity within an economy, and there needs to be equity of resource distribution. Social capital, this is one that's really, really hard to capture, because it's light and fluffy, which is the area I like. Attachment to place, sense of community, organisational linkages and cooperation, social embeddedness. How do you measure these things? It's pretty hard. But the techniques are out there, and it's very important for identifying whether this ties in with all the other elements that make up a resilient community. Then we have community competence. So can that community call itself into action in times of need? Is it able to critically reflect and solve problems? Is it flexible and creative? These are all things that create a resilient community. Now at this point, we're quivering around this statement again of communities being extremely complex. And when you look at diagrams like that, the academic research goes on and on, quite rightly, in this area. But again, that's not particularly useful for us when we've been asked to provide actions, programs, you name it, on improving community resilience. So finally, I'd just like to get on to defining the research needs and approaches. And luckily for us, within the National Strategy for Disaster Resilience, they've bitten the bullet. They've said, okay, you can talk all day, you can try and define resilience, you can try and define what it looks like, you can talk for a very long time about that, but we don't have that time, and we need to start on the road towards action now. So they've bitten the bullet, and they've described what they think a well-functioning, resilient community might look like. So that gives us something to work from. So they've defined it as a community functioning well under stress. They're able to adapt. They're self-reliant, and they have social capacity. So that's the ideal community. This is what you want it to look like. So getting to the crux of the matter, how do we actually identify these things? Because you need to be able to identify where they're at before you can start acting and improving that situation, and also measuring whether your programs are having an effect. So from that policy document, I've selected a few of the key items from the framework that have been selected as important in creating a resilient community. The first one is leading change and coordinating effort. And within the policy documents it says all leaders can help build and strengthen existing partnerships amongst governments, business and non-government sector and communities. So that instantly, in my mind, as a researcher, uncovers a whole raft of questions, of research questions. How can you actually understand whether leaders are helping to strengthen their existing situation through partnerships? And there are a number of research approaches that you can apply to this to understand that. So network mapping, partnership modelling, key influencer modelling, stakeholder interviews, bifocal stakeholder workshops. There's a whole raft of these research approaches that are possible. But the important element is being able to identify what's needed to create that element of the resilient community. Secondly, they state that communicating with and educating people about risks is an important element in creating a resilient community. And they say that information on disaster risk should be communicated in a manner appropriate to its audiences, and should consider the different needs, interests and technologies used within communities. So this, I think, ties in quite closely with what Alan was describing. We need to understand how people perceive the risks before we can start discussing it with them in a way that will be effective and in a way that they'll understand. And again, there's a whole raft of research approaches that we can apply to this. Your basic community survey, focus groups, discourse analysis and content analysis. So how are these risks actually discussed within this community? What language is used around these risks? Because it's a real clue to those people's understanding of the risks. I've created one here called Impartial Investigative Workshops, and if anyone wants to come and talk to me about that afterwards, I'll be more than happy to elaborate. And in-depth interviews. And finally, another element that they think is important, empowering individuals and communities to exercise choice and take responsibility. So this is the empowerment word. We really want people to be able to take responsibility, not only take responsibility, but know what to do as a result of that responsibility. So they state that members of a disaster-resilient community have the confidence to seek information from multiple trusted sources, again there's the trusted sources, and to be better informed about local hazards and risks, and are able to exercise choice on how to deal with them. So, in terms of research approaches here, quite often when government agencies attempt to engage with communities and try and get this participatory approach, it doesn't always work particularly well. And I have seen that when an impartial research organisation comes in, people are much more open to having this discussion. And participatory research is a real, not only are you gathering information about that, but people are they feel empowered, they feel valued, and with events such as deliberative events and hypotheticals, where you may give someone or a group a budget to work on, and to say, here's the problem, here's how you need to fix it, or how would you fix it. That really gives people the impetus and the sense of belonging that they need to get on board with that kind of event. So just to finish off and to come back to my mythical map, I think that trying to understand community resilience at this level, you could understand community resilience at a Victorian level. But once you start drilling down into those smaller communities, it's really important to understand that scale is a real factor. And we can't map at this whole statewide scale. So part of it is about understanding the community and defining that community. And once you've done that, you've got a much better basis to move forward. So I'll stop there and open it up to any questions. Thank you.